This is Low Life Louie Ramos, and I'm drinking at Moe's, and you could bet I'm drinking a Four Loko at Moe's.
All right, everybody. Want to thank Reaper Apparel for having Drinkin at Moe's be a brand ambassador. They encourage everybody to break out of that comfort zone, live their best self, which, hey, that's what got me starting the podcast. But they got great clothing, great apparel, t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, hats, all that good stuff. Be sure, link will be in the description, and use the code Drinkin at Moe's to get 10% off your order. Let's fucking go.
All right, everybody, welcome Drinkin at Moe's. Big Mo here. You know the drill. YouTube, like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff, because that YouTube, words are hard. Algorithm is a pain in the ass. Most places you can find your audio podcast, we are there. Today, I'm excited to have with me one of the current class of the GCW Deathmatch Hall of Fame, Louie Ramos. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Mo. Thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here. Thank you.
It means a lot hearing that. And yeah, I was excited to get you on. Now, first thing I like to start off with everybody with is what got you started as a fan, and then what got you started deciding to make the leap into the business.
All right, first of all, I gotta shout you out. I see you're drinking, you're making me thirsty. So I gotta break out the Loco, my brother. You know how it goes.
Right.
Cheers, man. Cheers. Man, my love affair with wrestling goes as far back as the 46 plus years I've been on this planet. My mom always tells this story, and I've shared it before, and I'll be glad to share it with you too. I was a rambunctious little bastard growing up, and when I started walking around 9, 10 months old, I'd break everything, destroy everything, and my mom would put me in the playpen, and I'd throw mad tantrums. The only two things in this world that calmed me down was Tom and Jerry and pro wrestling. My dad actually tried to wrestle in Puerto Rico in his youth. He never cut it, but he was a lifelong fan. So obviously he watched it with my mom when they were dating and turned my mom into it. My mom's from Ecuador, so there wasn't much wrestling at that time there. But my dad being from Puerto Rico, the wrestling there was like, culture, part of the culture, almost like in Mexico. Okay. Yeah, so my dad was always huge on it, always watched it. And that my mom always noticed. She was like, this stuff, every time I put it on, you sit there like you're mesmerized. And it's been like that my whole life. My mom always says, if she knew it was going to guide me in the direction it did, she would have taken it away from me. Because my mom is not a fan of what I do, but she understands now. As I've gotten older, she's gotten older. She understands what it has meant to me throughout my life.
Oh yeah, no, that's always great having that family support, even if somewhat reluctantly at times.
100% reluctantly.
Oh yeah, no, I unfortunately didn't really have anybody else. Well, I've had some relatives that lived a few hours away from me that liked wrestling, but nobody in my immediate household. But I still remember watching people from, some of my early favorites was always Bruiser Brody, Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, and just especially the Road Warriors. I saw them live once, but I remember first time I saw them in them spiked shoulder pads, and it was just like, oh my god, that is the coolest shit ever.
Looks like out of another world. Two gigantic men with crazy haircuts, and they looked like they were out of this world. And Brody looked like he was like a caveman. God. And that's what wrestling to me should be. And not to go off topic so early, but back in the day, a lot of wrestlers looked like they would kill you. And I think that's one of the few things missing now. The athleticism right now is higher than it's ever been, but I think that what's missing is guys looking a little different, having those like the Brody King on AEW. That guy
Yeah.
has one of the most amazing wrestling looks to me out there going today.
Oh yeah, and especially when the whole House of Black, when they get that whole face paint going in some of the matches, and especially Brody King when he legit looks like a goddamn monster
Yes,
coming out there.
exactly.
I mean, they all do. Malachi Black definitely, but Brody King, since we brought him up, yeah, no,
Yeah,
definitely looks like a damn monster every
yeah.
time he comes out there.
I love his look. That is the look of. I think like when I say the words professional wrestling, as a guy that has been around and watched it his entire life, I think that that's one of the first guys that represents what the word wrestling, what a wrestler should look like per se.
Oh, most
Mean,
definitely.
scary, tattooed, few scars, beard, long hair. I think in the look and talent, he has a lot of talent too. But looks department, he checks every box for me.
Oh, most definitely. And you bring up the whole thing about having people look like they could legit knock the hell out of you.
Yeah,
He definitely. I mean, he could legit knock the hell out of just about anybody, but he definitely looks like you just
exactly.
look at him and it's like, oh God, I'm not messing with him.
I'm crossing the street.
Most definitely. Now, what got you started finally deciding to make the leap into the business?
I like again a lifelong fan. Lifelong fan. Watched it. I wanted to be Abdullah the Butcher. My whole entire life, ever since watching him in the old UHF television,
Mm,
Channel 68, watching Florida stuff with him when he was coming into Florida and when they
yeah.
would bring him into world class. And I was
Oh,
like, this guy doesn't look like the WWF guys that I watch, but I love him bleeding and running around and
mm,
breaking chairs, and his matches would end in countouts and DQs. And I was like, I want to be just like this guy when I grow up.
oh yeah. No,
Fast forward, yeah.
oh God, he was definitely, and that feud that he had with, well, we brought him up, Bruiser Brody. That whole thing was just the epitome of intense.
Two guys that look like they would kill you going out there and killing each other. That's the purity of what, like, again, a fight should be. Two guys that look like that. So I
Yeah.
always wanted to be like Abby. Even though I grew up a Hulkamaniac, I'm not gonna lie. Hulk Hogan was my hero, my inspiration, and the guy that I looked up to. Not having a dad around because my dad left the family when I was much younger. But I wanted to be in a way like Hogan and his hero, like all the hero stuff that he portrayed
Yeah.
was amazing, especially for a kid without guidance.
Yeah.
But Abby was like the guttural reaction that got when I first saw Abby was like, I want to do like this guy. I want to be bleeding from the forehead and making other people bleed. I don't know why, but I just did.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I grew up in New York, in Brooklyn, New York, Sunset Park. That's not a made up hometown. That is my real neighborhood, my real hometown. And I used to buy all the old wrestling magazines. And as I was about to get ready to leave high school to graduate, the magazine started showing ECW.
Mm.
And now ECW wasn't Japan, it wasn't Puerto Rico, it wasn't Mexico, it wasn't like the bright lights of the WWE. It was like this really underground feeling, and almost local to me. 100 miles away, I could get there by bus. And I'm like, if these guys are doing it this close to me, I have to try to do this. I will hate myself for the rest of my life if I don't try my hands at this. And my brother, God rest his soul, was working at construction at the time, and me and him together we watched the Ian Rotten versus Axel Rotten barbed wire bat match.
Oh boy,
And
yeah. I've only seen that on DVD, but yeah.
I only saw it on DVD at the time, on tape actually, on VHS tape. And I told my brother, I said, "This is what I want to do." My brother actually 2 days later would go out of his way to find me a roll of barbed wire. We took my friend Scotty's old baseball bat and we wrapped it in the barbed wire. And I said to myself at that moment, I said, this is what I'm going to try to do. I actually gave up going to college to try to find a place where I could train to wrestle. So that's how deep my love for this was and how deep I wanted to make it in this.
Oh yeah. I mean, hell, you've had one hell of a career. Even like I mentioned at the beginning, the 2023 class of the GCW Deathmatch Hall of Fame. what was it like that night for you? Because to have the career that you've had, and then I can imagine to be recognized in a manner like that is
That
got to be
was
something amazing.
it's a huge feather in the cap because it's basically like getting your due, like getting that call, like getting that thank you, like that pat on the back. And again,
We kind of cut out there on the
not easy to make it out there. It's a struggle. You have to hold down a regular job. You have to do certain things,
yeah.
you know. But you love deathmatch. I love deathmatch wrestling, like I say, more than I love myself. So getting that nod is.
Oh, we cut out on the sound again.
You go hang up. Um,
There we
it
go.
meant the world to me to have that. The plaque is on the wall, and like every single tear I shed that day, those were real because that was the gratitude and appreciation that I received, and basically, giving a little back. It's a great honor to have on my wall, and like
Oh, damn. There we go again. All right, we're back. Little technical thing there, but yeah, no, I can imagine, after so much hard work and getting recognized by that, like you mentioned, it's something to just cherish because I can only imagine that, when going through everything, I mean, I know there's been times like when I was in the Navy, there were definitely times where I'd be like, man, is this hard work even like, do I have anybody out there even caring?
yeah.
But then you get that recognition like that. It's like, okay, that it was all definitely worth it there.
Yeah, it made it definitely, like I said, it was basically like getting your flowers. It was basically like getting that nod, that thank you, and it means the world to be recognized because, like I said again, it's not even within the sad part about deathmatch wrestling is even within the wrestling community, we have our detractors and our
Yeah.
haters. So it's basic, you're always gonna be defensive when it comes to that. But when the whole genre, the whole community comes together and gives you that kind of reward, it's amazing.
Oh, totally. I I've been lucky enough to somewhat develop a little bit of a following in the deathmatch community, which, I mean, I was always a fan of death matches just because, I mean, you just look at it. I gravitate towards that intensity and the that sort of stuff, and death match very much that. And then getting to speak to some of the people that I have now, I've had, like I mentioned, John Wayne Murdoch, Alex Colon, had Madman Pondo on. I had the Bev, the winner of the last CZW Tournament of Death. Like, and to think that I never would have thought at the beginning that I would have in the deathmatch community even developed a little bit of a following, or any following for that matter. So it's been pretty cool. And then getting to talk to people as widely regarded as yourself has
Thank you.
been a great honor.
I
And
appreciate that. Thank you.
the thing that always comes up is when it's done right, deathmatch wrestling is just like any other genre. It's just regular wrestling surrounded by the deathmatch elements, the tubes, the barbed wire, the gust plates, all of that. It's just like I remember talking with Jess Moss the other week. Her episode just came out last week, and it's just like, there's that story there. Like, yeah, there's all the weapons. You might start off with something relatively, air quotes, tame, but then you start ramping it up the more you go. And it's not just like, okay, you got a bundle of light tubes, I got a bundle of light tubes. We're just going to smack the shit out of each other.
And I think that's where the dystopia lays, where deathmatch wrestling, and I can't take credit for the words, but somebody they tagged the picture, they put the hashtag as deathmatch is art, and in a way it is, because you have to not only incorporate all the learnings and the teachings that you receive and what you learn as a professional wrestler, you have to incorporate all the deathmatch elements as well, and that is a art form all in itself. To make it make sense
Oh yeah.
is an art form all on its own.
Oh, most definitely, because yeah, any promotion, any group out there can go out there and just like, okay, throw out a bunch of stuff and just said, hey, go. But then to have the stories and everything like
Yeah,
we've been mentioning is something different, because deathmatch wrestling is a whole different animal when it comes to wrestling.
yeah.
It's not like wrestling in and of itself isn't for everybody to actually be in the ring and competing. Deathmatch wrestling, even that much more so, because I mean, you're putting yourself through that much more on
Yes.
top of what you already would be. What would you say it takes to be in deathmatch wrestling?
There's one thing, and I think that this would be across the board for everybody that does deathmatch wrestling. The love of it, the love of the style, the love of the genre, the love of the fans, the love of the art that it is. It's basically like a labor of love, deathmatch wrestling.
Oh, I would imagine so, because you get out there and you would have to be able to. Yeah, you. Let me correct myself here. You would have to be having the love of it to be able to put yourself through everything that you go
Yes.
through in the deathmatch wrestling, because you might be curious and you might like, oh, I can do, let's see, I'll do one. And then you get in there and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm not doing that again.
That's what I see a lot of lately. I see a lot of guys that never did one before, stepping in, dipping their toes into it, and some of them actually take to it, and some of them, like you said, they're like one and done. That's not for me, because it's not for everybody. Like I said, even within the wrestling community as a whole, we're not for everybody. So the ones that love us, man, that's who we do it for.
Oh, yeah. And funny story I have when it comes to watching deathmatch wrestling, I believe it might have been a GCW show where there was a death match going on that I was watching when my wife and I were having to live with my mother-in-law because of house renovations. But I was watching a GCW show, and my mother-in-law walks in and sits down. It's like, isn't that illegal? I'm like, just sit down. Just sit down.
Well, to people that don't know what it's like, they probably think, "Oh my God, that guy is cutting that other guy with a shard of glass." Yes, that would be illegal outside in the civilized world,
Oh,
civilian world.
oh yeah. I mean, hell, I've even not actively in a match, but two of my best friends were involved in a no rope barbed wire match, and one of them was a replacement for a guy that got injured the night before. But I was already kind of somewhat involved because a friend of mine had asked me a while before that, hey, could you go get me a, would you be able to get a grilling fork? And I'm like, why? And then he told me, I'm like, yes. We had this whole thing where I was sitting in my usual spot right in the front row, right by the entrance. And then he walks by. We had this plan, like he was just gonna walk by he like nothing. And then I'm like, hey, I got something for you. And then I had my backpack with all my podcasting supplies in it, and I just pull it out. It was pretty awesome.
And I'm sure it got over with the crowd, because the crowd was probably like, "Who's that guy? Oh my God, look at that!"
No, yeah, some of them, a lot of them know me, but yeah,
Okay.
there's a good deal of the crowd that, you know, even the ones that didn't know me, like, oh, who's he talking to there? And
Yeah.
oh my God. Yeah, and it was intense. Now, lately, we've had some people that have been, well, it's been rumored that they've been hanging up their boots. I mean, Billy Gunn recently, at the end of a match, we talked about the House of Black. At the end of the match, left his boots there in the ring. And Edge recently, this last Friday, as of recording this, had his last match. Apparently, last match. There's all sorts of rumors going around there, but it leads one to believe. When do you know when to hang up the boots? When is that? When is that going to be?
I had to retire 2 different times. I had to retire due to the doctor's concerns. Once was over my brain. Once was over the fact that I wrestled Masada. I broke my ribs during the match. A rib went in my lung. I wrestled 17. I wrestled 17 minutes with that rib in my lung, and went about my daily business, food shopping with my wife. I took my wife to the hospital. Just a crazy day. The day after the match, 36 hours after the match, I collapse. I get taken to the ER. I have a punctured and collapsed lung. I need to be rushed to ICU and have emergency surgery. And I was told I should never wrestle again because this happened when I was 39 years old. Here I am 7 years later, and I did take a break, obviously, and I thought I was done. But I came back at the behest of one Danny Havoc, the late great Danny Havoc, one of the best to ever do what we do. And he asked me to be part of his last match when he thought he was retired for good. He did a gauntlet match at GCW. I was part of that. Very honored to be part of that. Yeah. And ever since after that match, we did a show for an event for Matt Tremont, who had an injury. So we did a show for him. And after those 2 matches, I said, screw this. I'm coming back. I don't care what the doctor says. And it's been another good run. And I ended up during that run, I ended up having a match with Nick Gage. And I ended up getting my temporal artery sliced with the pizza cutter. I have the scar is 4 inches long, about 4 or 5 inches long. It was a ½ inch wide. It was very deep. It hit the artery. And at that moment, I'm like, screw this. I'm not going to be done. And after that healed, I came back and I actually won a tournament after that. So I don't know when I'll hang it up. Sometimes I have days where I'm like, this is it. This is the last one. And then there's days where I walk out of the ring, like after I wrestled John Wayne Murdoch at ICW this past April. I walked out of that match and I was like, I could do 100 more of these. It all depends on the mindset. As you get older, anxiety creeps in, self-doubt creeps in.
Yeah.
But when you have a good match like that and it's responded not only by the body and the person you're working with, but it's responded properly by the fans positively, then it just gives you more fuel. You're adding another log to the fire, and that's all that's all I do it for now. Just to keep adding a few more logs, man.
Yep. No, I can imagine definitely those matches you have. You have some that, have you like, oh God, how much longer am I doing this? And then you have those other ones that, like with John Wayne Murdoch, that just like, okay, I got a lot more in me here. Let's go. And, you bring up, the crazy spot there with, having the rib broken in the match. And then you bring up Nick Gage, which, by the way, I've mentioned this before in a few podcasts, that it is on my bucket list to go to a show with him in it and to be in the crowd when that music of his hits, because it's like a goddamn mosh pit. And I'm like, God damn it, I want to be there.
It's different. It hits different when you're there live, and it just he has so much goodwill with the audience, and especially what he's been through, the incarceration, the almost dying in the ring, and just the guy he's a great representative to deathmatch wrestling. I got nothing but love for him, and again, that when you're in there, especially when you're waiting in the ring and he's coming out, it just hits totally different. And one of the bucket list items that I do have is I'd like to run that back. A rematch with Nick Gage. I don't know how much he has left either. He's winding it down a little bit lately.
Yeah.
So I would love to be able to have one final match with him and to not only be able to finish that story, but to be able to finish a match that, that could have been something special for the audience. And that's who we do it for. So the fact that that match got cut short, I hate that, but things happen. And that's one of the few bucket list items I have left is a rematch with Gage.
That would be pretty sick. And you bring up, we talked about your crazy injury. He definitely had some of his own. The notable one where, what was it, right in the middle of the tournament of death, and he ends up getting life flighted out of there. That was nuts.
You just never know what can happen in deathmatch. You never know.
I mean, you never know what can happen in pro wrestling, period, but deathmatch wrestling that much more so.
Exactly.
Definitely. Now, I have two categories that I kind of round stuff off with here. The first one's a bit of a name game where I go through matches and where I try to theme it towards the guests where you've either shared a ring or you've at least shared a locker room with them at some point, and you give me the first thoughts that pop into your head about them.
Let's do it. Sounds good.
All right. First one, I'll admit, this one, I wasn't expecting this name on here for whatever reason, but I definitely knew this one had to be the first one. Ring of Honor 2003, Dusty Rhodes.
It was crazy to be able to say that I teamed with Dusty Rhodes. He is another guy that's the epitome of the entertainment aspect of professional wrestling. He's a guy that hooked a lot of people. A lot of people in the business to this day claim Dusty Rhodes as their favorite wrestler. And it was amazing to just be around him. He had like this special aura around him, and just to be able to sit down and just get a little bit of knowledge from a legend like that, just amazing. And I'm honored. And opportunities like that, I must thank Homicide for. Homicide is world renowned throughout the world as one of the greatest technical and proficiently great wrestlers of our generation, of our time. And he's my trainer. I'm blessed to say that I was trained by him. And if it wasn't for Homicide, I wouldn't have had a lot of these great opportunities. That definitely was one of them. So without him, I wouldn't have wrestled. I wouldn't have gotten to work with Abdullah the first time I worked with Abdullah, and I wouldn't have gotten a chance to team with Dusty Rhodes. So, thank you, Homicide, for that and for everything else. The amount of gratitude I have for that man can never be repaid. He is one of the greatest human beings that walks this planet, and I thank him for all that he's done. So anytime that certain stories are mentioned, I would be remiss not to include a good shout out to him.
Oh, yeah. I definitely have a friend of mine, like a brother to me out in Southern California that goes by SoCal Crazy, that I've always told him, because he's like a legend out there. And I've said, anytime I have a chance to hype him up on this show, I'm taking it. Homicide, very much, I imagine, for you that way. I know he's from, oh boy, I'm trying to remember the first time I even saw him, but he's always been one of my favorites. I talked about gravitating towards those guys that kind of have that intensity in their matches and everything. Homicide, very much that, every bit. Now, next one, a guy that I'm hoping to get on the podcast. So we'll see how this happens. But with the schedule this guy keeps, with not only running the promotion Hardcore Hustle organization and his own in-ring career, we'll see when it happens. But the one, the only, Matt Tremont.
Man, that guy's like my brother, man. He's one of the main reasons I had that second renaissance. Him and Louie bringing me into On Point Wrestling when they created that basically sparked my second life. Before that, Steve Monster Mac, who's another guy who I came up with, who is like my brother, pulled me out of like a semi-imposed hiatus and helped me get back in the ring. And after that, after getting back in the ring in the tag team with Steve, the Heavy Hitters 2.0, Matt Tremont reached out to me. He was like, I was a fan of yours watching your JP stuff. And a year later, him and Louie started On Point. They brought me aboard. I was part of their first few shows. And Matt's been like a brother to me. We've helped each other out in various different ways throughout the years. An amazing human being, a great ambassador to Deathmatch Wrestling. I hope that when he hangs it up, he becomes the ambassador to deathmatch wrestling. He's given. He reminds me of an old mentor to me, Bobby Lombardi. God rest his soul. Uh, Bobby used to take kids and help them by giving them a place to learn and wrestle, and that was the old doghouse in Brooklyn, New York. That Homicide trained a lot of people out of there. Matt has basically done the same in the South Jersey area. He has a bunch of great students. He passes on his knowledge, and I can't say anything about him that just like how much love I have for him. H2O is like a second home. I'd like to be a part of it more often. That's like the only knock. He like rotates his roster around, and sometimes I've found myself on the outside looking in, which I don't like because I like to be part of the action. I like to be part of the mix. But besides that, Matt Tremont is a brother, a friend, and I'd do anything for him, and a great opponent as well. One of the best to ever do it.
Oh, most definitely. And, he definitely would fit that mold for one hell of a ambassador for deathmatch wrestling whenever the time comes when he decides to, at least as far as the active in-ring portion, hanging it up. I imagine he's one of those that at some point, or in one way or another, I don't imagine he'll be walking away completely.
No, it's hard to. It's hard to for all of us, for anybody. Once this is in your blood, it's hard to walk away in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, I can only imagine. Now, the next one, we talked about him a little bit. I mentioned that he is a featured item in my collection shelf over here. But the one, the only Duke of Hardcore, John Wayne Murdoch.
Man, John Wayne Murdoch is one of the best deathmatch wrestlers in the world. That cannot be argued. And I told him this when they announced me for the Hall of Fame. I do feel that the match that we put on at ICW No Holds Barred this past March 31st
Yeah.
is the match that put me over the top. Everybody was watching that for some reason. Everybody noticed, and I think that was the final nod. I think that match was the final like wink that put me over the top to get into the Hall of Fame. So without Murdoch, I think I might have had to wait another year or two. But thank you, Murdoch. That match was one of my all-time favorites. And you cannot take away what the man has done for deathmatch wrestling. And the fact that he finally got his flowers and got to go to Japan, nothing but love for him. And he goes back and forth working with a lot of the Japanese guys when they come into GCW.
Yeah.
He does ICW No Holds Barred. He's been king of the deathmatch. He's won a bunch of tournaments. He is, without a doubt, again, one of the best.
Oh, most definitely. And it took me a while to get him on because that guy's a damn machine with the schedule that he keeps.
Yeah.
So it took a little bit, but we finally got it done. And man, I was so hyped that we finally got it done. He just one of those guys, as big of a deathmatch fan as I am, it was like, holy crap, I'm actually getting to talk to this guy. Because when I first started, yeah, there was a bunch of guys out there that I'm like, okay, these I had this list, and I'm like, okay, there's some like, okay, here's some that might be attainable, a little more reachable, and then here's some that I'm like, might be a long shot. He was on the one that I thought was going to be a little bit of a long shot, but when he said yes, I'm like, I about dropped my damn phone. I'm like, holy crap.
Again, again, that's the great thing about him is no matter what he does and what he accomplishes, same thing as Tremont. They are humble. They are humble. They don't let all that hype, all those wins, all that stuff. It doesn't get to their heads. They are just grounded, humble individuals.
Oh, very much so. And I've had limited interaction with Matt Tremont, but I've definitely gained that from the both of them. Very humble. Don't let, like you said, don't let it all get to their heads, which there are those out there that do, but those two definitely not in that mold at all. Now, last but not least, for the name game category here, a guy. I mean, we talk about some crazy, crazy, scary injuries. This guy had one not all that long ago, and I was actually watching the show live when it happened. But Hoodfoot.
Oh, I actually just got to wrestle Hoodfoot a couple weeks ago, June 28th for ICW. A great young talent, a great addition to the Deathmatch family, and as tough as they come, man. That guy is tough as nails, double tough, and a great worker, and another guy who doesn't let his newfound fame and his newfound name get to him. Just awesome, down to earth individual, cool as hell, a great opponent. I wish I could say more about him, but I've only known him about a few months now, and I was lucky enough to share the ring with him. But again, if this guy continues the tear that he's been on, he could be up there on the Deathmatch Mount Rushmore one day. If barring injuries and stuff like that. I don't know
Yeah.
if you're talking about the injury he had with Slade, where there was a chunk of his arm
Yep.
falling
That
out.
one.
Yeah, that injury reminded me of two injuries that are famous in deathmatch wrestling. One, Necro Butcher when he fought Madman Pondo. He took a bump on light tubes that weren't laying; they were standing up. And the same thing, he had like a bubble of flesh coming out of his elbow that was just like bouncing everywhere. And then back in one of the old Tournament of Deaths, diehard Dustin Lee took a light tube to the back. And again, the meat was flapping like the ball of meat, flapping up and down as he's running, trying to stop it. The meat is just bouncing up and down. And that's what Hoodfoot's injury reminded me of. But listen, he tried to finish the match. Sometimes discretion is the better part of valor, almost like with
Yeah.
me and Gage, where I was looking to just take my head up and keep going. In where we wrestled, there was commission. We wrestled that match in New York during Hoodfoot's battle. Smarter heads prevailed, cooler heads prevailed. They wrapped him up. They made him finish the match. Wrap it up. But that guy, just by going out there and then being back in the ring 3 weeks later, it just how tough and dedicated he is to the sport. So again, I got nothing but love for the guy, and I'm honored to have been able to wrestle him at my age and his age. He's a lot younger than me, and again, a guy with a lot of burn, coming in, a lot of press, and I'm just the old guy, that's still hanging on, and we had a great one. So I'm very happy, and a big shout out to Hoodfoot.
Oh yeah, I've been a great fan of his, and yeah, I'm glad that it didn't end up worse than it already was, and that he was able to get out there as quickly as he was after that. It was great to see, and I'm happy that he is getting all the recognition. And yeah, I mean, if he's not already at least pretty damn close to that active Mount Rushmore, I mean, it's not going to take him long to get there. The road that he's on right now, definitely. Now, I got some kind of random questions. Some might be wrestling related. Actually, looking at this list, I think most of them are, but yeah, some might be wrestling related, some might not be. You just first answer that pops into your head.
Sure.
All right. First one of them that I usually keep in here because I love hearing the stories and I've heard some doozies. Craziest in-match moment for you. And I know we've talked about one that it's got to be right up there. But what's another one?
Oof. Okay. I've heard of stories of the guys taking the Kenzan to the head, and some guys actually screaming and crying when it was getting removed. I won the King of the No Ring Deathmatch Tournament August 2019, H2O. During the finals of the match, I got the Kenzan stuck in my head. And this was a little bit after the Nick Gage injury, so my head was still not fully healed. I took the Kenzan, like there's literally a video on YouTube of me having this Kenzan pulled out of my head. My son tried it, and thankfully there was a fan who had a pair of pliers. And the Casanova Valentine, who's one of my favorite opponents and one of my favorite humans, Cass helped me by removing the Kenzan. And I'm very proud of this. At not any moment in that video did I flinch or show any amount of pain as they pulled that damn thing out of my head. And I'm going to tell you, it hurt, but I showed no pain. And a lot of people go back to watch that video. They're like, "Do you feel anything at all?" Because that was rough. But other than that crazy moment, I think just going to the ring. There's been a lot of matches where I've gone to the ring, and I've actually like broken down going through the curtain from the emotion of the moment. You know, coming back to H2O after a hiatus when I wrestled Stretch. The match where I got to team with my son against Stretch and Anthrax. Those are like big moments. When I wrestled Tremont at GCW, I forget the name of the event, but Tremont was supposed to wrestle Zandig that day. Zandig no-showed. I ended up getting the call. I got the spot. Date with Destiny, GCW Date with Destiny, another good one. And then, winning my 2 tournaments, my 2 trophies, those are probably like, to me, the matches and the moments that stand out the most.
Oh, I can imagine why they would. And, you know what, that video that you mentioned, I believe I've actually witnessed that one, because I'm like, I remember, I forget when I saw it, but yeah, I just remember them taking a pair of pliers, and it was like, like I hurt just watching it because it just looked fucking painful as hell. Now, this is one I don't believe I've actually asked this question on here, but I figured this one might be one I might add into the rotation because, as somebody that's covered a lot of ground when it comes to pro wrestling and deathmatch wrestling, is there a place that you haven't traveled to for a show that you would like to mark off?
The one and only, my wife just made a noise and she knows what I'm about to say. There's only one place in the world, and that's Japan. I've watched a lot of guys, like I just mentioned, Murdoch, Tremont, Havoc, Schlack, Jimmy Lloyd, Cologne, some of the best in the world. They become even greater. They breathe that rare air once they get to Japan. Recently, like I said, Murdoch, Neil
Yeah.
Diamond Cutter, Shane Mercer, they checked it off their list. So, much love and respect to those guys. I do feel like that would be the final feather in the cap. I think that once I do Japan, I can wrap up the rest of my bookings and the rest of my time as an active in-ring competitor and call it a day. Will I disappear from wrestling? No. Will I ever disappear of being a fan or being in the crowd? No. But I think that as an in-ring performer, if I did get to ply my trade in Japan, if only, for like one small tour, like a GCW style tour, a couple of days, I think at that moment I would be able to hang it up happily. Um, just any place internationally, Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico, England, Germany, any place that holds deathmatch wrestling, that has had deathmatch wrestling, I'd love to work. But again, Japan is that monkey on my back that hasn't gotten off. I haven't gotten that one off yet, so I'd love to, man. That's the one thing I'd love to do. That and that's like basically the top bucket list item of not just my wrestling career but my life.
Oh yeah, I've had that on my bucket list as well, to actually get to go into Japan. And I mean, I came close when I was on deployment. Like, we had this little bit of time where we were anchored off of Japan so I could see it, but only a few people actually got to go ashore for, I forget what it was. I unfortunately wasn't one of them. So I've always had that little monkey on my back as well. That's like, man, I was so close. Now I just need to get over there and actually get on land there. Now, I love asking this one, especially of the deathmatch guys, because there's been some different answers. There's been some ones that were weapons that I would have expected, others that not so much. But what is a weapon you would avoid being used if you could make the choice?
I This is gonna sound crazy, but I wish you could have sat in all these locker rooms that I've sat on. I've been asked to take all sorts of crazy stuff, and I've never said no. There is the one thing that I will say no to. as anything off an extremely high distance. And not because I'm afraid, but because that's how my brother passed away in life. My brother died in an on-the-job accident. He fell 114 feet to his death.
Ooh, boy,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so I have that. That is one of my, like not fear, but one of like the things in the back of my head. Anything that has to do with heights, that is the one thing that I may have to just say no to. Not because again I'm afraid, but because of that in-rooted feeling that I had. My brother passed away. I was only wrestling like 3-4 years when my brother died. So
Yeah.
I had never done anything too crazy at that moment. Maybe a little barbed wire, a little couple of light tubes here and there, nothing too nuts. I've gone way above the crazy scale in past years. But again, if you've noticed any of my matches, that's the one thing that I won't do. You'll probably never see me fall off a scaffold or off like anything 2-3 tiers in the air. The highest dive I ever did was with Jay Lover, and we jumped off like the Eagle's Nest in the ECW arena for Jersey All Pro, and we went through a table that was full of tubes. And actually, that was exactly 8 days before my brother had passed. Before my brother passed, so my brother
Mm.
was still alive when I did that high ass bump. Uh,
Mm.
that's the only thing I wouldn't be keen on doing. Other than that, I've had fire blown at me. I've fallen through flaming tables, gotten hit with flaming stuff, gussets, kenzons, barbed wire, corn cob holders. Huh? Nailed to the cross. Yeah, I was nailed to the cross by the late great Balls Mahoney. Like yeah, VCRs, televisions, you name
Yeah.
it. I think I've been bashed over the head with it. I don't I when it comes to deathmatch, I don't have a no. But like I said, the one thing that I would really take a step back is I see these guys like Murdoch and Jimmy Lloyd. They're doing these bumps off these scaffolds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I'll be like, maybe next time.
Yeah. No, I can understand, especially with the everything, the backstory behind it. I know I'm trying to remember who all has said this. I know I've had this answer happen more than once where they've all, without missing a beat, said toothpicks.
Oh, I've done those. I've done toothpicks are funny because toothpicks are like a smaller version of
The
the skewers.
skewers. Yeah.
Yes, they're a little harder to like control, but in the end, the toothpicks aren't so bad as long as you don't get them like embedded everywhere.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one weapon that people probably don't realize that really bothered me. Fell ass first onto a cactus thanks to Jeff Cannonball. That one was really.
Oh boy. Yeah. I can only imagine that. Holy crap. But yeah. The like you mentioned with toothpicks, you have that you have the chance where you get all of it, but then you break off the wrong piece and you get, part of it embedded in there, and yeah, that could be kind of insane. Now, I keep this question in here because I would feel weird with the name of a show like Drinkin' and Moe's if I did not have this one on here. But favorite drink, whether it be alcoholic, non, or one of each.
I'll give you my listen. This is crazy because you just saw me sucking down the Four Loco, and I continue to suck down the Four Loco. I'll always suck down the Four Loco. My favorite drink, believe it or not, is ice cold water.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. I mean,
People don't
especially
realize that. People
hell,
don't realize that. They ask me, they're like, I'm a big alcohol guy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not. I've dabbled. I've tried a few things, legal or otherwise. Not no shame in experimenting. So, but I'm a big alcohol guy. That's what I really have gotten into. I'll drink anything, but my favorite drink is, again, like I said, ice cold water, and I think my second favorite drink is the Four Loco.
nothing wrong with that. I know, especially here today. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, and it got up to, with the heat index, making it feel like it was 116.
Oh man, oof.
Good. A date like it's been today, yeah, ice cold water. That would be pretty damn refreshing.
Yes.
Now, last but not least for this random question, best advice for anybody wanting to get into wrestling?
This may sound a little corny, and I think John Cena cornered the market on it, but never give up.
Hey,
Never give up. If you have a dream, follow it till you either achieve it or you die trying. And I'm it's no secret. I was an overweight, short statured Hispanic kid from Sunset Park, Brooklyn. I was never supposed to make it. I was never supposed to do anything except maybe do a couple of enhancement jobs on the indies for guys coming up that were going to be stars. And here I was wrestling Terry Funk, Abdullah the Butcher, New Jack, Axel and Ian Rotten, uh, Norman Smiley, Tommy Dreamer. Man, like I got a big list, man. Raven, Spike Dudley. Like crap. I refereed for Jimmy Snuka and Psycho Sid, Yokozuna, King Kong Bundy, teamed with Dusty. It's like a kid like me wasn't supposed to do none of that. So to be able to have done it, man, it means a lot.
oh, I can only imagine. And yeah, it is a great philosophy, especially in wrestling, because I can only imagine. I mean, I tell people when they would ask me a lot about enlisting more when I worked with kids, I'm like, one, make sure it's what you want to do. And then secondly, never give up, because I can imagine a lot like in wrestling, you're going to have those moments where you're like, what the hell am I doing? But if you really love it, you never give up. You never know how high along the ladder you're going to get.
Exactly.
Now, before we go, where can people find you social media wise? So if they don't already have their eyes on you, the Hall of Famer, they can go ahead and get them there.
I'm the worst social media guy in the world. I'm basically just on Facebook. Louie Ramos on Facebook. I think I'm gonna probably branch out into like Instagram because as I go into Facebook, it's become nothing but ads lately, and I hate it because I remember when Facebook was just, you could use whatever name you had, and you could not hide your identity, but use a different name. Now Facebook has become like nothing but ad driven, and you scroll and you want to just see your friends' posts and like upcoming shows and stuff like that, and maybe like a funny meme or like an inspirational quote. That's what I'm on Facebook for. But lately, it's just ads upon ads upon ads. So
Yeah.
I've been seriously thinking about getting the Instagram. My son has it, my wife has it, so maybe. But other than that, just on Facebook right now. And you could probably find me at an H2O show in Williamstown at some point. And YouTube, yeah. I have some of my good stuff on YouTube, just Low Life Louie Ramos.
All right. We'll definitely get that in the description. I can hear my dogs rumbling around upstairs, so I better go get and checking on them. But anyways, thank you for taking the time to talk to me tonight.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you. I appreciate it.
best of luck out there with future shows and continuing that Hall of Fame career you got going.
Thank you. And before I go, I just want to thank you for your service. A lot of people don't realize that, without people like you putting their life on the line for our freedom, we wouldn't be free. Freedom isn't free. So I thank you for your service, brother. Appreciate that.
Thank you. That means a lot. Well, that is it. Have a good one.
You too, my brother.